Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. One of the consequences of this extremely long government shutdown has been the fact that air traffic controllers are still working without pay in a job that is incredibly high stress and requires incredibly sharp mind and a great deal of specialized training. And given the rigors of that job, many have just not been able to show up for work the way they would ordinarily because they simply cannot be working without compensation, having no idea when their pay will come back again. But our president felt that was unacceptable. In a recent social media post, he said he was not happy. All air traffic controllers must be getting back to work now. Anyone who doesn't be substantially docked. This statement, if you can even call it that, is massively out of touch for a number of reasons. Something that's important to note is even before this government shutdown, the FAA was operating with a major lack of air traffic controllers. And once the shutdown hit, air traffic controllers went from having partial pay to having no pay, forcing many to seek out supplementary employment simply to get by. But at a job like an air traffic control that requires all of your attention and energy, I can't even imagine how it would feel to go into that having already worked a second job. I have no doubt that many of these air traffic controllers were stretched to their limits, and some probably even beyond that, which resulted in many having to call in sick, be it because they were genuinely sick, or if they needed the time off simply to regain the energy necessary to do their job effectively and safely. So to chastise them for doing what they had to in a circumstance they had no control over, it's absurd and bordering on cruel. I understand the president wants to feel like a big man and present this image of authority, but this isn't it. But I guess also not that surprising. I have no doubt that he has absolutely no clue about the stress and rigors of air traffic control and doesn't know what goes into it. So of course he doesn't understand why these people would be suffering the way that they are. Donald Trump is the last person who should be lecturing anyone about not effectively doing their job and not showing up to their work all the time as they should, because this man can't do either. These air traffic controllers are working 6-day weeks and 10-hour days with zero pay. Donald Trump has zero clue what that would even be like. He's never worked for that long in his entire life, because he's never in his life actually had to do it. He is a man who doesn't know what real work is because he's never had to do it in his entire life. Oh, he'll give orders, but he's never had to take them. But the reality is that these air traffic controllers are, as a statement from the National Air Traffic Controllers Association said, the unsung heroes who report for duty to safely guide this country's passengers and cargo to their destinations and deserve our praise. They have certainly earned it. And I agree, they absolutely deserve all the praise they can get, because working the kind of job that they do with no pay is absurd. And while the president had nothing good to say about those air traffic controllers who had to take time off during these 40 days of all work and no pay, he had nothing but praise for those who never took any time off during the shutdown. He called them great patriots and said he would recommend giving them a $10,000 bonus, and said that any air traffic controllers who wanted to quit shouldn't hesitate to do so, but they should receive no payment of severance of any kind, and that those who did would be quickly replaced by true patriots. And while I can't really speak with any confidence of just how true patriots these replacements would be, I can certainly say that there's not going to be any quick replacing, considering just how many years it takes to properly train and certify an air traffic controller, especially in the complexities of modern air traffic. Shockingly, well, I guess not so shockingly, President Trump has absolutely no clue what he's talking about. It is simply speaking for the sake of speaking without any sort of knowledge or substance in his words. If Donald Trump was a better president, or really just a better man, he would be expressing gratitude and compassion to these workers who have been working a hard, exhausting job for over a month without any sort of pay, keeping the airplanes that our economy depends on flying safely in a moment where humanity and humility is required. He has neither. He's made it clear time and time again that he has an inability to express any form of empathy, and this is yet another example of that. I think former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg put it best when he posted on Twitter, "The president wouldn't last 5 minutes as an air traffic controller, and after everything they've been through, the way this administration has treated them from day one, he has no business shitting on them now." And of course, he's absolutely right. The current state of the air traffic controllers has resulted in 4,500 cancellations and 18,000 delays across all the nation's airports. The FAA has had to announce that they are planning to reduce flights by up to 10% at the 40 busiest airports, which they began this past Friday by reducing flights by 4%. Towards the beginning of this government shutdown, I was pretty convinced that air traffic controllers were going to be the key to ending the shutdown, much like they were the key to ending the previous shutdown under President Trump in his previous term. But unfortunately, I think that, surprisingly, the administration learned their lesson from the last time and took steps to ensure that there could not be a walk-off at the major airports, crippling air traffic the way they did last time. Also, they were much more willing to let both the people working to keep the airplanes in the air and the people who would be on those airplanes to suffer, likely because they were confident they could convince everyone that all of their suffering was thanks to the Democrats, and they could shift all that blame from all that pain onto Democrats. That messaging, of course, did not work because people did not believe the Democrats were responsible for this shutdown, and rightfully put the majority of the blame on Republicans, which includes President Trump and his administration. But at a certain point, it almost didn't matter which side of the political aisle carried the majority of the blame for the situation we were all finding ourselves in. Air traffic controllers were going into their second month of working their jobs unpaid, and absolutely no way of knowing how long that would have to go on for. Instead of berating and punishing those who were not able to continue working, we should all be grateful that any of them showed up at all. Given how tiring and stressful and long their jobs are, I don't think many could make it nearly as long as many of them have. An air traffic controller's job is hard enough when they are getting paid, let alone when they aren't being paid and have no clue if they will ever be paid anytime in the near future. I think one lesson this shutdown has taught us all is just how underappreciated air traffic controllers are. Since many have really no knowledge about aviation at all, they take for granted all the people and all the work that it takes to get passengers to their destinations or their merchandise from the overseas factories where they're made to their doors. And even if they understand that there has to be a pilot to fly their planes to wherever they're going, they often don't consider all the other things that go into managing those flights. They don't see the air traffic controllers, they don't hear the air traffic controllers, so they don't really think about the fact that they are a vital part of air traffic control. So since they don't see them, it's easy to not acknowledge them and to not really be focused on just how vital and difficult what they do is, and the often tragic consequences of what happens when they aren't able to do it. But of course, the average person only cares that their flights are being delayed or canceled. To them, the why doesn't matter. All that they care about is their own personal inconvenience, and everyone who facilitates them getting to where they want to go in the time that they want to get there can just do their jobs, not really taking a care to consider the fact that all of those people have lives too and should be treated as such. Honestly, given how this government shutdown is looking like it's going to end, I think I would have preferred air traffic controllers to walk out and completely cripple air traffic so that they would be forced to end the shutdown to correct it. Not only because it would be far more dramatic, but also because maybe it would at least give people a momentary pause to consider air traffic controllers and just how hard they worked in a job most of those average people could never do, with no promise of any sort of compensation to do their job. They just showed up to keep air traffic going because it was the right thing to do, even when it inconvenienced them personally. If that didn't make them, quote, true patriots, I don't know what does. All the air traffic controllers deserve gratitude and thanks. Even the ones that stayed, no matter what, even the ones who didn't stay and had to take sick leave just to be able to function as a human being and maybe be able to do their job. I haven't been on an airplane or even to an airport in a couple of years now, but even I am super grateful to them for allowing those who have been to be able to in normal non-government shutdown times, and exponentially more so now during the government shutdown, when they're all basically being forced to work their high-stress, difficult, exhausting jobs entirely for free. I could absolutely never do what they do, nor would I ever even attempt to, so I am very grateful that they can and that they do. I absolutely agree with former Secretary Buttigieg, and air traffic controllers absolutely are the unsung heroes. And maybe they deserve to be sung of, just a little. So that's going to be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off, another slice of news.